It's 7 p.m. Monday, September 9th, here in Seoul.
Coming up on News Center tonight. South Korea's central bank and local think tanks lowered their forecasts for economic growth this year. As various factors continue to weigh on Korea's GDP, a Nobel Prize-winning economist recommends the government use bold fiscal stimulus to avoid deflation.
Rescue efforts continue for 4 South Koreans thought to be trapped in the engine room of a Hyundai Glovis carrier ship that capsized off the U.S.'s east coast.
President Moon Jaein appoints Cho Kuk as justice minister despite strong objections from opposition parties. Moon dismisses corruption allegations against Cho as mere suspicions, saying prosecutorial and educational reform must come first.
And the Korean government says it may remove Japan from its list of trusted trading partners as early as next week as tensions continue to simmer. This while the majority of the Japanese public wants the dispute to be resolved as soon as possible. News Center begins now. Good evening and welcome to Arirang News Center. Coming to you live from Seoul, I'm Noaram.
And I'm Handaeun. Welcome to the program. We'll begin on the economic front. Korea's major research institutions have cut the nation's growth outlook for this year, citing falling exports and unfavorable external factors.
Shrinking investment and domestic consumption are also to blame for Korea's gloomy economic forecast. Lee Kyung-eun starts us off.
The Korea Economic Research Institute now forecasts the local economy to grow 1.9% this year. Downgrading it from the previous 2.2% in June, it becomes the first agency in Korea to put the figure below 2% range, citing growing uncertainties from home and abroad.
Unlike what was expected before, the US-China trade war has escalated in the second half. And at the same time, there's the ongoing Seoul-Tokyo trade dispute. A lowering of the growth rate was inevitable, given the falling prices of semiconductors and growing trade uncertainties stemming from the export curbs Japan imposed in July.
Other economic think tanks have also lowered their forecast. The Hyundai Research Institute now has the figure at 2.1%, down from 2.5% 3 months ago, and the Korea Institute of Finance last month also predicted 2.1%. Along with sluggish exports, experts attribute the cut to falling investment and domestic consumption. Last month, facilities investment dropped nearly 5% on year. And inflation, largely due to falling oil prices and weak consumer demand, turned negative for the first time, triggering fears of deflation. According to the Bank of Korea, if the economy maximizes its economic output at a constant rate of inflation, what's known as potential growth rate will be between 2.5 to 2.6% this year and next. The figure is usually calculated every 5 years and has been steadily declining from around 5% at the turn of the century, which economists attribute to a rapidly aging population and falling productivity. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
Amid growing economic uncertainties, one Nobel Prize-winning economist has advised Korea to take bold actions to prevent possible deflation and to remain in the global supply chain while avoiding being part of the U.S.-China trade battle. Our Seo Eun-kyung tells us more.
Paul Krugman said Monday that South Korea needs to use fiscal stimulus as a means of avoiding deflation and boosting its economy. He was speaking in Seoul at the 2019 conference of the Knowledge Sharing Program. He emphasized that when the global economy is weak, fiscal expansion can be effective. He also said that South Korea, as Asia's fourth largest economy, has plenty of room for expansionary fiscal spending. Krugman also emphasized the importance of South Korea remaining in the world supply chain, expressing concerns over the rise of trade protectionism, especially through the U.S.-China trade war. Against this backdrop, Krugman said that while it might be difficult for South Korea to exercise direct influence on the U.S. and China, Seoul can avoid being part of the trade dispute. And Seoul should remain in the global supply chain by trading with third parties such as the European Union. The conference where he was speaking, the knowledge sharing program, aims to share Korea's expertise in economic development with other countries to address economic imbalances and improve sustainability. 서은경, Arirang News.
South Korea may officially remove Japan from its list of preferred trading partners as early as next week. At a press briefing today, the Trade Ministry said it is in the final process of revising its strategic material export-import control guidelines. The Trade Ministry had announced the measure in August, and the 20-day public opinion gathering process ended last Tuesday. Removing Japan from the list would mean stricter conditions for Japanese firms to import strategic goods from South Korea and a longer approval process from the Korean government. Tokyo announced new export curbs on Seoul in July and removed it from its trade whitelist on August 28th, citing an alleged lack of export controls on South Korea's part. Meanwhile, 8 out of 10 Japanese citizens believe Seoul and Tokyo should mend their ties, according to an opinion poll conducted by Japan News Network over the weekend. According to the survey, 79% of some 1,100 respondents said they want bilateral ties to improve amid the ongoing trade and diplomatic spat between the two countries. Half the respondents said the leaders of both countries must hold an early summit to settle their differences. Seoul and Tokyo's ties turned sour after the Abe administration placed what many see as politically motivated trade measures on South Korean firms. Abe's approval rating in this survey dropped 3.1 percentage points from the month before. Now to the latest developments on Hyundai Glovis cargo ship that capsized off the coast of the U.S. state of Georgia. 20 crew members have been rescued so far from the ship, but we're still waiting on the news about the 4 remaining South Korean nationals. Let's connect with our Cho Kuk for more. Siyoung, fill us in.
Well, sure, Donna. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs said the 4 crew members are all trapped inside the engine room. The U.S. Coast Guard rescue team knocked on the ship's hull to locate the South Korean crew members and said there were responses from inside the ship. The U.S. Coast Guard is expected to send rescue divers into the ship for those 4 trapped inside on Monday at 6:30 a.m. local time or 7:30 p.m. Korean time, or in just a few minutes from now. The South Korean government is also sending an emergency team. 3 South Korean officials will depart for the U.S. this evening, while 5 others are traveling from the Consulate General of Atlanta to the accident site. And the South Korean firm Hyundai Glovis also sent its emergency team to the site to keep its headquarters in Seoul up to date on the accident.
Siyoung, do we know anything about the exact cause of this accident?
Sure, Dan. The ship registered as a Golden Ray departed from the port of Brunswick at around 1:40 a.m. on Sunday and was heading to the port of Baltimore when it began listing heavily off the coast of Georgia. The vessel is currently 12.6 kilometers away from the port of Brunswick in seawater that is just 11 meters deep. But unfortunately, it is still unclear what had caused the ship to tilt over. An investigation into the accident is in progress now. But an eyewitness known as Roberts told the local media that as the ship was departing from the port, another vessel known as Emerald Ace came into the port. Then the Golden Ray capsized. The witness said, however, it was too dark to tell what really happened between the 2 ships. That'll be all. Back to you.
Well, Siyoung, hopefully the rescue operations will pick up speed soon, and hopefully the 4 remaining South Korean nationals will be safe somewhere inside the ship. Thank you. President Moon Jaein has called for a speedy reform of South Korea's prosecution and a fairer system in the education sector. He made the call this Monday while appointing 7 of his new minister-level officials, including incoming Justice Minister Cho Kuk, who was mired in a series of allegations surrounding him and his family. Our senior political correspondent, Shin Se-min, with more.
President Moon Jae-in called on Monday for the reform of 2 key fields, the prosecution and education.
이제 남은 과제는 권력기관의 정치적 중립을 보장하고 국민의 기관으로 위상을 확고히 하는 것을 정권의 선의에만 맡기지 않고 법제도적으로 완성하는 일입니다. 국민을 좌절시키는 기득권과 불합리의 원천이 되는 제도까지 개혁해 나가겠습니다.
The remark came during a ceremony for the administration's latest cabinet shakeup, including the appointment of Justice Minister Cho Kuk, whose family members have been making headlines in an escalating nepotism scandal. The president, however, stood by his justice minister pick, who had been seen as the architect of the Liberal administration's prosecution reform project. And his call to rectify the education sector comes amid strong doubts and distrust over the nation's college admission system, which was brought into the spotlight again through the daughter of Cho. A former senior presidential secretary for civil affairs, now justice minister, had gathered a significant amount of attention from all political camps and the public upon his nomination last month due to a string of alleged misdeeds involving his family members. Those suspicions ranges from preferential treatment for his daughter and the admission to renowned colleges to his family's dubious investment in a private equity fund. Also included in the reshuffle Monday, Che Gi-young takes the post of Minister of Science and ICT. Che is an expert in intelligent semiconductors, and his appointment reflects the administration's goal of boosting domestic R&D and the semiconductor industry. Leading the Gender Equality Ministry, Lee Jung-ok, a prominent scholar in sociology and an avid advocate for women's movement, taking the helm. Kim Hyun-soo is given the post of Agriculture Minister. He had been already at the post since the end of August, becoming the president's only pick to have earned parliamentary support through this cabinet shakeup. Eun Sung-soo, a former president of Export-Import Bank of Korea, will now lead the nation's top financial regulator, the Financial Services Commission. And Cho Sung-uk becomes the head of the Fair Trade Commission, replacing Kim Sang-jo, who is now a presidential chief of staff for policy. A lawyer specializing in freedom of the press, Han Sang-hyuk, will take over to become the director of the Korea Communications Commission. 신세민, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, we're getting mixed reactions from Parliament over the appointment of Justice Minister Cho Kuk. The ruling Democratic Party welcomed his appointment, saying he has the expertise and commitment to carry out the Moon administration's reform drive. The party called on Cho to dedicate himself and contribute to society while serving in the public post and create a fair and just prosecutorial and judicial system. The main opposition Liberty Korea Party, which had been calling for the scrapping of Cho's nomination from the beginning, said the president has gone against the wishes of the people. The Conservative Party said it will consider all possible means of protest, including a boycott of legislative activities and public rallies. The appointment comes after a month of intense wrangling between rival parties over multiple accusations of irregularities involving Cho and his family. Seoul Supreme Court has sentenced the former governor of Chungcheongnam-do Province, An Hee-jung, to 3.5 years in prison for abusing power by sexually assaulting his secretary. In a ruling earlier today, the top court finalized the original verdict made in February, saying the victim's testimony is credible. The former presidential candidate had made headlines when the Me Too movement began to spread in Korea early last year. He was indicted for raping his secretary 4 times and molesting her on 6 occasions, and had been found not guilty in the first trial, but an appellate court found him guilty and ordered the prison sentence. Officials in the US say South Korea and Japan might decide to acquire their own nuclear weapons if North Korea doesn't get rid of its nukes. It's a notion that might put a little more pressure on Pyongyang to denuclearize. Oh Jung-hee explains.
South Korea and Japan may feel the need to develop their own nuclear weapons if they're not sure about the U.S. extended deterrence against North Korean threats. That's a message coming from both a U.S. congressional think tank and a top nuclear envoy. The U.S. Congressional Research Service released a report about non-strategic nuclear weapons last Friday. It said some South Korean politicians have highlighted the need to deploy U.S. non-strategic nuclear weapons on the Korean peninsula or develop the country's own nuclear capability in the face of imminent threats from North Korea. The claim echoes what U.S. Special Representative for North Korea Stephen Biegun said on the same day. Speaking at the University of Michigan, Biegun floated the idea that voices could arise in South Korea and Japan questioning until when they can depend only on U.S. extended deterrence and whether they should develop their own nuclear capabilities. Seoul and Tokyo had scrapped their plans to develop nuclear weapons in the past, trusting U.S. extended deterrence, Biegun added. Such a message from the U.S. aims to show North Korea a picture of what may happen in the future should their denuclearization talks end up as a failure. It also urges China to play a greater role, as Beijing would be most against nuclear-armed South Korea and Japan. The U.S. continues to urge North Korea to resume dialogue. Biegun stressed that the North should pursue engagement with the U.S. when opportunities are given, and that Washington is ready to engage as soon as it hears from the North. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said in an interview with ABC on Saturday that Trump would be, quote, disappointed if Kim doesn't return to the negotiating table. 오정희, Arirang News.
In other news, British politicians are continuing to battle out the terms of Brexit, and the drama is not over yet, according to experts, as British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is expected to call for another vote on holding an early general election. Oh Soo-young reports.
It's likely that the deadlock over Britain's departure from the European Union will continue for months to come, despite Prime Minister Boris Johnson's push to leave the EU by the October 31st deadline. Johnson said Monday to his Irish counterpart that he believes a withdrawal deal can be reached by October 18th. This comes after he suffered a major defeat in Parliament last week by MPs who voted to block a no-deal Brexit. Johnson then raised the stakes by calling for an early general election, which MPs rejected. The Prime Minister has said he'll push for another vote on a snap election on Monday.
Well, what he would like is for the Conservative Party to win that election with a bigger majority. He would then be able to overturn the legislation which has just gone through to block no deal and take the UK out of the European Union by the 31st of October.
Johnson said last week that he'd rather be dead in a ditch than request an extension to the deadline, more than 3 years after the historic Brexit referendum. While the opposition has voiced strong concerns about the effects of a no-deal Brexit on the British economy and possible disturbances to supplies of key imports such as medicine, hardcore Brexiters say the UK can simply abide by WTO rules on trade with the EU, and that new and better trade deals could be made around the world. Analysts say Johnson is playing a game of chicken with his opponents, as well as Brussels, as they struggle to work out their differences over the Irish border.
I think he is committed to this idea. I think it's probably an illusion that by threatening no deal, he can somehow persuade the EU to make concessions to the UK. All the noises coming out of Brussels suggest that that strategy isn't working. It seems fairly clear, I think, to most people in this country, because we've seen leaks come out about the negotiations with the EU, that they are in fact a bit of a sham and that Boris Johnson really simply wants to take the UK out of the EU without a deal.
21 MPs from Johnson's own Conservative Party voted last week against the government in passing the legislation to block a no-deal Brexit. Those MPs have since been expelled from the party. According to British media, the group is now preparing to take the Prime Minister to court if he refuses to ask Brussels for a Brexit delay. Commentators say another way to prevent a no-deal departure would be dissolving the current government with a vote of no confidence and forming a new government that supports an extension. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Coming back to local news, the Korean Thanksgiving holiday, or Chuseok, is celebrated according to the lunar calendar, meaning it's a little different every year. It's coming up this Friday, a week earlier than last year and 3 weeks earlier than in 2017, so that has an effect on the kinds of gifts people get each other. Our Kim Hye-sung went out to the shops to see what people are buying.
From fruits and canned pork to health-related products, packaged gifts are on display for Chuseok, Korea's Thanksgiving holiday. This year, there are more summer fruits for fruit packaged gifts like melons and shine muscat grapes on top of the usual apples and pears, as the Chuseok holiday falls on September 13th this year, the earliest it has been since 2014. Korean beef is also a hot item. Premium Korean beef sets priced roughly between 100 and 1,000 US$ are also on offer. At department stores, premium beef priced 3,000 US$ saw sales soar. Pre-orders for Korean beef at supermarkets went up by double digits on year as the weather is relatively hot, meaning people prefer refrigerated beef to grill rather than buying frozen beef that is used for soup.
Sales of refrigerated meat went up to 36% in 2014 when Chuseok fell in early September. So we increased the number of refrigerated beef sets by 10% this year.
In addition, everyday items like shampoo, health-related products including vitamins and Korean ginseng products known to help boost physical and mental activity also saw sales go up.
I would like to buy health-related products like ginseng. They are pricey, but I can tell my parents like those goods.
Beef, fruits, you can't eat them all and they get spoilt. So I prefer practical goods like shampoo.
Canned luncheon meat is the #1 best-selling Chuseok gift this year. Many businesses use canned pork as the price also falls between $25 and $80 within the $80 limit that can be spent on gifts under the Improper Solicitation and Graft Act known as Kim Young-lan Act. It also has a long expiration date, and this year a wider range of packaged canned meat like packaged canned pork with olive oil, seaweed, and canned tuna filled the shelves. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
Chuseok is also one of the most popular holidays for moviegoers, and there are several new releases in store for movie fans in time for the holidays, with cinemas hoping they see a rebound in sales after this summer's bleak box office. Park Se-young has more.
3 Korean movies are set to open on September 11th, the day before the start of the 4-day Chuseok holiday. Based on the third comic of the popular Tacha series about gamblers, Tacha One-Eye Jack tells the story of a talented poker player who joins hands with a mysterious gambler. Actor Park Jung-min plays the lead role, and the film marks Ryu Sung-bum's big screen comeback after a 4-year absence.
In the film, we start out as a team, so that should be the most fun. The characters are so diverse and each has their individual specialties.
In the bad guys' reign of chaos, several high-profile prisoners escape, and the police have to form a team with other criminals in order to catch them. The film is based on OCN's popular TV drama series The Bad Guys and stars actors Ma Dong-seok and Kim Ha-jung. The last homegrown production is the comedy film Cheer Up, Mr. Lee. Actor Cha Seung-won stars in his first comedy film since 2007 as an overgrown man-child who suddenly finds out he has a daughter he never knew existed.
I'm vaguely hoping for people to get a different color and taste of comedy with different characters.
The movie industry is hoping that the new releases will draw people to theaters and help the industry rebound from low ticket sales during the summer peak season, when no film sold more than 10 million tickets in the July to August period for the first time in 6 years. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
Chuseok is also the time to indulge in some delicious food and drinks. Not only for us humans, though, but also for the animals we love, like the Everland Zoo, where the animals are getting some treats of their own ahead of the holiday. Our Moon Jaein has a story.
Chuseok will be just like any other day for the critters at South Korea's Everland Zoo, but last week, ahead of time, they had a special feast and plenty of guests to entertain. A 5-year-old red panda named Lessie is loving the special treatment. He got a traditional Korean plate called a gujeolpan, full of fruits like bananas, apples, and tomatoes. This bundle of fur perched in a tree is in an extra good mood today, greeting his keeper and the dozens of visitors who ooh and ah.
That panda is eating all the delicious fruit. I want to get some for Chuseok too.
The ring-tailed lemurs are also getting some treats. It's up to the zookeeper, who's wearing the traditional Korean hanbok, to make sure they all get to enjoy the feast. It's fun for the visitors to watch the animals find, play with, and eat their treats.
We're doing this to celebrate Thanksgiving and have some fun with the animals living here at the zoo. We've set up some special ways to feed them, like the 구절판 and putting bananas in the hay.
The treats are different from each species. Elephants get bundles of hay decorated with fruits and vegetables, which they gather around and put their snouts in. The zoo is located in Yongin, Gyeonggi-do Province, and is home to more than 1,600 animals. The Pre-Chuseok feast has been a pleasure for the animals and the zoogoers alike. Ji-young, Arirang News.
Georgia's renowned literary work with an epic heroic story, The Knight in the Panther Skin, meets the Korean fans at a special photo exhibition. And our Won Jung-hwan reports on what the book has to tell us.
A special exhibition has opened in Korea, shedding the spotlight on a superb achievement in Georgian literature. Held at the National Library of Korea until September 28th, The Knight in the Panther's Skin, written about 9 centuries ago, meets the Korean audience for the first time through 40 pieces of high-quality pictures of the ancient manuscript. The 600 pages long book has been translated into at least 50 languages, including Korean. That feat was accomplished by Professor Cho Kuk, who spent 10 years researching and translating the text through cross-checks of the English and Japanese versions.
It was funny how every country translated the title quite differently. For example, in Japanese and English, they translated into panther, but in Russian, it was tiger. I needed to find out, so I met with some Georgian experts and decided to use tiger in the end.
The professor also pointed out that its narrative structure that speaks of friendship, courage, and love involving 2 Indian and 2 Arabic soldiers is very similar to the popular Korean TV drama Descendants of the Sun. And besides literature, there seems to be other cultural similarities between Korea and Georgia.
The Georgian-Korean history pages look like each other a lot because we are both of us one of the oldest nations in the planet, and both of we are survivors. We are fighting for our territorial integrity and sovereignty till today, and peace is the very important issue as well.
And the ambassador also mentioned the upcoming Chuseok holiday, highlighting the similarities between the 2 nations.
We have in Georgia the same tradition. We are not calling Chuseok. It's not reflected about the harvest, but the tradition itself is the same. And we have the same tradition as well. We are going to remember our ancestors to the cemeteries, making the food, the special food for that day, especially bringing to the cemeteries, drinking there and remembering. And also it's very important in a family-wise because families gathers and we are going together. I think that this is the values what we are sharing between each other.
Although it's a month-long exhibition of an ancient book from Georgia, the organizers hope that it could lead to more tangible cultural exchanges between the 2 countries in the future. Won Jung-hwan, Arirang News.
To celebrate the 71st anniversary of North Korea's founding, Chinese President Xi Jinping has sent a congratulatory message to Kim Jong-un. The North State media said Xi hoped for greater happiness for the people of the 2 countries by continuing their traditional friendship. Referring to the 4 visits made by Kim to China and Xi's own visit to the North in June, the Chinese president said he's delighted to see their common beliefs becoming stronger. Russia's President Vladimir Putin also reportedly sent a congratulatory message in which he described the relationship between the 2 countries as a constructive one based on friendship. Hyundai and its affiliate Kia have ranked 5th in the global electronic vehicle market for the first half of this year, up 4 spots from the end of 2018. Hyundai's EV sales went up 140% on year to nearly 45,000 units for the first half. The car maker said tighter emissions regulations in Europe have helped increase demand for its electric SUVs. The firm's share of the global electric car market in the first 6 months of the year also went up over 2 percentage points to 6.5%. South Korea has been ranked the 16th best country for tourism by the World Economic Forum. This marks Korea's highest ranking by the non-profit so far and is a jump of 3 spots from 2017. The Travel and Tourism Report, which shows the development and competitiveness of a country, states that Korea has good tourist service infrastructure and environmental sustainability. However, the country's price competitiveness dropped 15 places. In football, Vietnam, coached by Park Hang-seo, beat Gus Hiddings's China 2-0 in an under-22 friendly on Sunday. Vietnamese striker Nguyen Thien Linh shined, scoring both goals in the match in Hubei province. It was a meaningful victory for Park, as the Dutch coach was his mentor when they worked closely on the coaching board to take South Korea to a historic 4th-place finish in the 2002 World Cup. Both teams are preparing for the upcoming AFC Under-23 Championship, which will be held in Thailand next January. That has been your 3-minute news flash. It is that time now where we take a look at Arirang's digital media content.
And Onion News is back, taking a look at the top trending stories.
우리와 우리의 후손이 살아갈 소중한 삶의 지정과 환경이 완성되고
We need to clean up our seas from the tide of plastic that's been flowing into them.
So what we'll be testing is the behavior of the screen. When we go all the way to the garbage patch, it takes close to a month to get there. So we really want to make sure we do not damage the screen while we're towing it to the garbage patch in a few months from now.
Seems like we'll continue to have wet conditions as the typhoon was immediately followed by monsoon rain. So have your umbrellas handy.
For more details, let's turn to our Michelle Park at the Weather Center. Michelle.
Now, the capital has been under a cloudy sky with just a drizzle today, whereas the southern provinces have been soaking
with some heavier rain caused by the monsoon front. Now, however, the rain will concentrate over the northern parts of the peninsula tomorrow, soaking the capital and the surrounding areas too. Now, the rain will start to clear off tonight for the south, whereas the capital will see a good amount of rain, mostly between 30 to 80 millimeters until tomorrow, but some areas may even receive more than 100 millimeters of rain. Now, checking out the ratings for tomorrow, most regions across the country will get up to similar readings. Seoul, Daejeon, Daegu, and also for Jeju will begin the day with 24 degrees Celsius. And the daytime highs will be higher than the seasonal norms, with Seoul reaching up to 28 degrees, while Busan and Jeju will hit up to 29 and 30 degrees respectively. But rainy weather is in store until Wednesday, luckily before Chuseok holiday kicks off on Thursday. Now I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That will wrap it up for this edition of Arirang News. Thank you, as always, for watching.
News in Depth is next.